Hello, I'm Jason Mann with Jim Check, Kent Molgat, and Gord Lovegrove is at our table this afternoon, and this is KelownaNow, streaming from the podcast lounge at KelownaNow, live on YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. And here's what's making headlines this afternoon. Massage therapist misconduct. The College of Massage Therapists of BC takes action against a Kelowna RMT. What conditions have been imposed? Learn more at KelownaNow.com this afternoon. Urgent search in the North Okanagan for an 80-year-old woman with Alzheimer's. The Vernon RCMP search and rescue and others are on the case. We'll bring you the latest updates. And Kelowna's train station pub redevelopment. Big changes are coming to a beloved Kelowna landmark. Find out what's in store for the train station pub property. And for these stories and more, check out KelownaNow.com. Our forecast, we are there. It looks like we're at 16 degrees. Sun is here. We may see some rain showers later on. And well, let's make sure all our mics are on. We're here. We've got our afternoon show, and Councillor Gord Lovegrove is here in studio with us. And yesterday, Council approved seemed to be controversial vote proclaiming Kelowna in a crisis, a climate crisis. Is that the exact way that you describe it? Just proclamation of a climate crisis?
Correct.
Yes. Yeah. And so we want to get and learn a lot more about the meeting itself, and also what the climate crisis would mean in terms of the proclamation itself for residents. And a lot of people are there's certainly a contingency or a group of people who are very curious about what that means. There's probably a very strong contingency of those who are cheering this on, and some that are opposed perhaps even. So it's a tangled conversation, but we want to unthread it and see what we can come to as far as understanding. So maybe the best thing is just I don't know if this happens in council all the time, but there was some fireworks at the end of the meeting. Maybe we could run the clip.
I wanted it for the record to appreciate that I have ideas, but I want, in fact, staff to be given that latitude to come back. They are the experts.
Okay,
Thank you.
so there is a motion. It was moved by Councillor Lovegrove, second by Councillor Singh. Any further discussion on this motion? No further discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Excuse me, no, this is not an open public hearing, regrettably, so you have no say in this today. I'm not. Excuse me. Excuse me. You have made a statement by being here. You have made a statement by being here. You did hear the debates. You did hear the debate back and forth with regards to council, and I thank you for being here. I thank you for being here, for your time. And excuse me, it wasn't your silence. Basically, just so you are aware, there was a request for public input that came forward with regards to council, and that motion was turned down. So it's basically a vote of the majority of council. You saw that motion was turned down for that input. Then we just went directly to the motion. So I cannot supersede what council decides to do. Council decided to move forward with the motion, and that's where I have to head the direction. But I do thank you for being here. Just take a 10-minute break, please, council.
So thank you for coming here today. Obviously, that was a little contentious at the end there, and a 5-4 decision on council. You don't see that very often in the last little while. The question I have, there's been a lot of feedback from the community, and some people think it's government overreach, and rightfully or wrongfully so. Every time they hear the word crisis, they think government's going to interfere in their lives. So how do you answer back to them, again, rightfully or wrongfully agitated by it? Do you think, or how do you talk to them and say that they shouldn't feel that they're going to face government overreach?
Yeah, well, I don't talk to them. That's up to the mayor.
Right.
And you heard him.
But you're responsible to the voters as well, though, right?
I'm responsible. I don't speak for council. I'm
right.
here as one voice of 9
Sure.
speaking on my personal opinion. And indeed, just for the record, it was an 8-1 in favor of the motion in support of the crisis. It was 5-4 against delaying that motion,
okay.
or what's called a
Right.
deferral. And that's
Thank you for the correction.
no problem.
Yep.
The motion to defer is not debatable. It goes immediately to a vote. And we are essentially still very close to the middle of the discussion on the whole idea, are we in a crisis or not, why? And I think, there was great discussion around the table. And the last thing I ever want to have is groupthink on council. I mean, I was hoping for a unanimous vote in support, but not without a lot of discussion. It went on for quite a while. And the voices you hear at the end of that are the people, about half of them that were in the gallery, that up until that point remained silent, just holding up signs saying, "You work for us." And I had said, and this is more a long-winded answer to your question, Jim, is indeed, I was absolutely thankful they were there, just as supporters were there as well. And I just said, indeed, I do work for you. That was what their signs were saying. You work for us. But I also work for the 12,000 people that voted for me and the 150,000 other people that called Kelowna Hope. So all through my campaign, we put the notice of motion out in April. We've had opportunity, and I have talked since October 15th when we were elected, and before then, that people, I want to be out there. I want to be in the community hearing from people. So my platform was one of declaring a climate crisis. So for me, there's been input to me personally, and for me personally, I felt very strongly I was going to follow through on a promise I had made and on the platform with which those 12,000 people elected me. So that's it. And the other part I think you're asking is, why a crisis? Why, crisis, emergency? To me,
Well, I think people are just emergency kind of like scared, right? Like flood crisis, water crisis,
What's
fire
next?
Crisis, COVID crisis.
And you heard, in fact, almost everyone on council, including the mayor, say, well, what does that mean? What's next? What more? And in fact, the mayor had read off a very long list of all of the great things the city is doing. And I made a point as we were discussing council priorities, plus even acknowledging that staff are doing some great things. But it's pretty clear, based on our July 24th meeting report, that we're actually falling further behind. So we've done great, we got to do more. And Councillor Woolridge, just again reflecting what I heard, was very articulate, way more than me, by the way. He's had a little bit more experience at pointing out it's just to acknowledge what our youth have been asking us for, and that is just to acknowledge the truth that we need to take more drastic action. So call it a crisis, call it an emergency, call it it's time, but we wanted to send a very strong signal. I wanted to send a very strong signal, and my colleagues supported me on that, to everyone, that business as usual is not good for business, not in this climate.
If I could ask, you went there hoping for unanimous support. You didn't quite get it. But were you surprised that the conversation around the council chambers got onto whether or not it's even happening at one point? Did it surprise you that it came back to that?
Oh, thanks for the question. I actually was pleasantly surprised it went there, in fact, because Luke and I, obviously, we go out before the afternoon meeting starts for lunch, and we were just chatting, and I was asking him for advice about pickleball, his other favorite topic. And he had already told me he's read the motion, he read the background in the report, which is public, beforehand over the weekend. He liked what he saw, and I was like, wow, we have some conservative members of council, right? And I actually was very pleasantly surprised that as it started going around the table, everybody acknowledged their personal impressions in terms of impacts on them, their family, their friends, their neighbors, of climate change. So it wasn't so much as being debated on whether climate change is happening, it was acknowledging it's happening. And to me, the debate was around, okay, is it going to just be a hollow declaration, or is there going to be some actions attached to it? And I had wanted to attach some actions to it, but being a newbie when I presented it, I had only said notice of motion, climate crisis. The clerk told me, because I had actions down below, and I read them off if you listen, that...
Can you share them with us right now, too?
I think
maybe
it's
the
recorded,
highlights.
but I think basically, could we establish a mayoral task force, because that would address a lot of the fear and anger that you heard at the end of the meeting. And my colleagues were asking, what more? What next? And is it overreach? I think, Jim, you had mentioned that word. Certainly, that's the last thing I intend. What I intend is fuller, more effective engagement of our community, because guess what? We got a few buildings, we got vehicles, we got some staff, but it's not going to be City Hall that we can lead the way with a signal, but it's going to be our 150,000 residents that actually have to get behind us and be engaged to hear what more can be done. So task force, number one. The second thing was, look around at cities in the world and across North America that are doing things, and you can pick up any news app, including yours, for success stories and get staff to report back on that so that we can maybe think about those things. I teach and research on this stuff. I've got some ideas as a UBC engineering professor doing this for over 30 years. There were other things like, I presume you folks have also heard about the step code debate. Should we go decarbonize, fully no natural gas, or do we, electric EVs, things like that. And then the last of the four, the big ticket items, more of a policy than a bullet list, was the climate lens, which staff are already working on. And I just wanted to pick up the urgency on that. So a lot of these things I have been asking for, and the mayor's known about them since before we were on council. It was part of my campaign. Then, as you get into building a team, the mayor wanted to meet with each of us, find out our priorities. I'd give him that list before. So it was nothing new, but it was just not allowed by the city clerk according to the rules of order. So it was a very appropriate comment, like, just a motion? What next? What more? And so those are the four items.
What are some of the things the city's doing right now?
Well, we won an award at the Union of BC Municipalities Convention for removing the fuel from fire smart.
Right. Mitigation, fire mitigation.
It's actually, that's an adaptation. Mitigation is when you actually turn back the dial and reduce your emissions. With the fire smart, it was an adaptation because we're going to get hotter, drier, and more wildfire and smoke. And to try and be resilient and protect ourselves, our community really has to go through and clear out the underbrush. Take the bottoms of trees, delimb them. I've done this in my own yard. Take fuel, wood piles leaning against homes, under sun decks. Any fuel you've got in and around your yard, especially if you're in an interface with forest, you got to be very careful about, because it takes an ash from a fire across the lake.
We took 20 pines out of our yard.
There you go.
Because obviously, if you have fuel next to your house, that's a danger, right? I would think at some point insurance companies are going to look at homes and say, if you have a bunch of pine trees around your house, you're probably going to have a tough time getting insurance.
Well, pine trees, but there's also resilient, fire-resistant trees. You heard of the professor from UBC was talking about aspens, things like that. Other things, we need to get more people on the bus. And basically, when you look at 30 to 50%,
do we not need to fix the bus routes first?
Oh,
though?
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You say get more people on the bus, but we don't really have.
So to me, again, this is me as an engineering professor nerding out in front of you and you to say, this is my bullet list. But honestly, I want to leave it like I had said yesterday. Let's have the staff experts and look at other things, and they've heard from me already. I've taught a lot of staff that are in City Hall doing this stuff. But what we've done already, the Fire Smart's one, we are trying to get the province to get that money to us, and they're working on it, and they're coming hard and heavy as they can. But there's the transit yard that's existing. We want to upgrade that. We've talked about, again, publicly, the Highway 33 corridor when the priorities came through. There was a lot of climate environment discussions and actions that have been done. We're doing some good stuff.
Can we summarize your intent that the city, while it may have been doing some good things, needs to do more? Is that the underlying intent?
That was essentially what I answered the mayor.
Do you think that by passing it that will happen?
Yep. That's just my... We asked staff to come back, and the mayor says, what more? And he went through a great list. And the last thing I want to do is insult any of our staff or council. We're all people just trying to do the right thing. We have so many priorities we're juggling. But this one, you listen to the scientists, you listen to the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. When folks call code red and drastic action, and there's a lot of stuff already going on, there needs to be more. And my science colleagues at UBC, one of which is on the federal panel for climate action. We've got experts in and outside North America calling us to do more, do more.
So leadership is one of the things when you're asking people, saying you want the residents to do more. So as a leader in the community, are you leading by example or
I love that question. In fact,
Do you
I
know what
was
I mean?
hoping you could ask
There
that
you go.
question. How long have we got, people?
Well, we got all day.
Okay, so first of all, I'm Gord, and I'm a caraholic, okay? Like, does anybody here not own a car? Come on, Kent. What have you seen me show up? What mode have I used most on all your interviews?
You show up on a bicycle, all sweaty from it.
Yeah, well, today I made an exception because they're working on the bike lanes on Sutherland. So I said to my wife, I'm not riding because I don't have a safer.
But usually you're getting around on your bike.
I am. I'm a psycho-list.
Psycho
Okay,
list?
you get it? Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well,
And
that's
so I'm going to be
walking.
getting
So what is the
council
vehicle
today.
you drove here today?
It was my Prius. I was one of the very first Prius owners in Kelowna, 2005, when I helped start the School of Engineering. I got it brand new out of the box. And I'm on my second one now, and I've got a plug-in Prime on order sometime next year, supply chain, right? We heard that yesterday as well. It's not cheap. It's not cheap, but I'm willing to put my money where my mouth is because I have that option. Not everybody does, which is why I'm trying to promote choice, right? I support the experts in City Hall coming to us promoting transit. I mean, the province does recognize this, guys. Yeah. So for me, leading by example, I have designed and built the city's first certified net zero carriage house. Again, a little bit of a premium, but it's going to pay off in less than 8 years. Right. So the buildings and transportation are probably 75% of all greenhouse gas emissions in our cities, guys. That's like, we know it's over 50% right now in Kelowna for transportation, and buildings are about 25%.
So here's a bit of a difference probably. I drive a full EV. And I have solar on my roof that I power the EV with.
Well, it's not Tesla then.
It is a Tesla.
What, with solar?
Absolutely.
Did you retrofit that?
I can show it to you.
That is so cool. I've got solar in my roof, by the
my
way.
wife drives an EV and my son drives an EV. So it's a full EV. We've ditched all our ICE cars because it makes sense, right? It just makes sense as well as it helps the environment. But I think in my perspective is that we need to educate and show people or incentivize people to a better path as opposed to sometimes the government coming in and heavy-handing them, right? Because I think what we get from that is a lot of people getting angst, right? And they're just like, oh no, here they come again.
Okay, is there anything heavy-handed coming out of this?
Just wait, though. Just wait.
He told
Just
me
trying
we
to
were
help you
going to
get
fight.
Yeah,
Come on, guys, keep it clean.
turn that mic off. But I just think like there's I'm a big believer in EVs for sure. I love the vehicle I drive. I think it's the best vehicle I've ever owned. And I know people are sick of hearing about Tesla. But the solar panels on the roof, basically solar panel, right now the federal government offers, it's basically free, right? You can have a solar panel system on your home for next to nothing. How do we educate people though, as opposed to the government coming in and mandating things? I think that's what people are scared of, right? Because I think if we can incentivize 60, 70, 80% of the people, like, I'll give you an example. Today, I showed a stat to Jason. EV adoption, Canada's at the bottom. Like we're just
BC's at the top, 20% and going.
We're just Hungary's like the country underneath us, like the Scandinavian countries, of course, lead as usual, right? But China's like way ahead of us.
Okay,
like we have a 5% adoption rate.
So you're saying we should go communist? Sorry,
You've
what are you
been
saying,
going on
Jim?
a long time. You seem to be, Jim, you got to be interrupted. You seem to be implying that this motion would set into motion all sorts of mandates on the public.
No,
And
I think people
Lovegrove-
have a genuine fear. That's what I'd say, is that they have a genuine
and
fear.
to that
needs be
point,
addressed.
I'll give you an
Let
example.
him answer it.
Well, sure.
Let him answer whether this opens the floodgates.
Let me give my example though. Like, so I got
Why is he here?
text. Well,
They're going to let him answer a question?
I haven't asked one question yet.
Okay,
have I?
neither has Jim. Let him answer whether or not this creates...
I'm going to contextualize the question a little bit further, that is all. It's the same question, I want to further contextualize it so I don't have to ask it again after it's been
So
answered.
he'll be able to answer
So the
eventually?
question is, the adjunct question to this question is, I received a text from somebody, a friend of a friend, who was worried that this proclamation would open the door to broad sweeping emergency powers up to and including confiscation of homes. So I want to get that very specific point out there to understand what are the potential downstream effects. That's the same question you're asking.
that's-
But
yeah,
What an
exactly.
amazing thank you insight, because that's exactly what I asked our clerks, both regionally and at the city. Excuse me, man, I need more water here. You've got me choked up.
It's good water, City of Kelowna water.
Absolutely. I said, should I use the word crisis or emergency? Because during our wildfire emergency and our declarations where people were forced to evacuate, and of course it got almost physical, and Shuswap might have. That's exactly what I wanted to avoid. That is the last thing I want to see. And by the first action I mentioned, asking for the mayor to establish a task force to engage businesses, First Nations residents, the whole community, all ages. That's, I hope, going to avoid things like that. It's got to be representative. We appreciate that. But it's a task force, not a committee, because of the urgency. And it will on-go, as far as I'm concerned, till our term is over, and whether they want to continue it is up to the next council, not us. So that's my hope. That's my personal opinion. Number one, it absolutely is not a exercise to steal freedom. It is not that at all. It's an exercise to send a strong signal that folks, I like to think, well, Jim as well, and I are leading by example, and we all got to do our part. Because if we don't all invest somehow, we're not getting there. Because what we're doing today ain't enough.
I wasn't going to virtue signal, but yeah.
Does he have,
I
got an EV?
I do.
Excellent. And by the way, just think about wildfire and smoke. You're stuck in a lineup trying to evacuate in your car because we don't have my Valley Long Light Rail system yet. But that could be another topic, but I had to slip it in just to say.
But you got to call it the love train if you ever do it.
Kent,
Wow.
I'll leave it to you, but that's my personal opinion. And if the mayor is watching this, as a UBC engineering professor, I got research on this, Mr. Mayor, and I apologize but having said that, when you're stuck in that lineup, that solar panel is going to keep your battery alive. And Tesla, the more modern, have they come back with it? Because the more modern models, they stripped the solar panel off.
There's no solar panel on the roof of the car. The solar's on my house.
Oh, jeepers, because
I was
Tesla,
wondering what you were getting at, but yeah.
Hi, that's what I said.
Okay.
So my Prius has a solar panel. That model, that year, the last year they had it, I bought it specifically, and it was 2 years old at the time because I wanted that potential.
But I just think that education definitely, the city could do more in education. Everybody could do more in education. That's part of, we're going to do a show called Energize.
Yeah, and thank you for being here to help walk through these issues.
We're going to do a
little bit more
show called
intimately.
Energize where we're going to talk about EV and AI and all that stuff.
And don't forget homes.
And homes, yeah, net zero. We're actually working on development too that's net zero. So I still think that if we use the carrot instead of a stick, that we'll be in a better place.
Oh, and actually, that was the other part of the comment. And so, Jim, after 3 layers down, I forgot. Incentives are absolutely critical.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know if you know the names Jack Vanderstar.
I don't.
The White Lake Radio Telescope, famous engineering physicist, brilliant man, helped start our School of Engineering. Dick Fletcher, another fellow, Urban Systems, retired now. They're both retired. Also one of the external advisors from our School of Engineering. Both of those gentlemen and I have been meeting with some of our newer faculty to start a concierge program. So this is where we can not just educate the next generation of engineers to help homeowners and building owners and businesses, but actually explore opportunities for a niche where homeowners that, as we get the word out there, can take advantage of stuff that's been there for over a year now. You just said it. Solar panels. The feds have had money sitting there.
Not being used. And then the other big thing in British Columbia is that you get to send your energy back to Fortis and develop credits in the high times, like in the summer when you're generating excess that you can draw on in the wintertime. Right? But that information is not out there for everybody. Like I did everything. I did the EV grant, I did the solar panel grant, and I didn't do the charger grant. But it was really, really hard, and I'm pretty tech savvy.
Who'd you use? Did you use anybody, or was it all you?
No, I did use a company.
Okay, you don't have to name.
I don't want to plug anybody here today.
Okay,
but
I hear you, but that is identified as the issue, and actually, the ideal house to own that have been identified by those gentlemen I've already named is a 1980s, so not even a new home. A new home, yes, it's even better. You can do it quicker, but we're talking, there are a lot of homes in that 1980s band that we could go after. Condos, that's going to be a problem. How to retrofit
the stratas,
a major
but the strata
building.
corporations.
Absolutely.
Right, because they won't let you do it.
Or they're not informed. They don't understand the savings. And to me, I'm going like, okay, there's an upfront builder, and he's worried about extra costs. But then there's the upfront buyer worried about extra costs. But 30% of our upfront buyers actually are using that for rental revenue or investment revenue. So it's not them worrying about it. They've probably got a mortgage on it if they haven't paid cash over 25 years. It's the occupants that are paying the extra energy costs. If the message can get through that actually you're going to pay it off like I am in my carriage house in less than 8 years, you're going to be able to mortgage it over whatever 20-year mortgage you've got. It's your occupants. If we're really after affordability in this city, I think the contractors, the engineers should be leading the way in promoting all net zero construction, because that's going to make it cheaper for the service workers that support our tourism, our healthcare, all of our industries to live. What do you got? You got transportation, utilities, and food, right? I mean, transportation is fuel. That's the big gas tax. We're already taxing that. But energy is another huge hit on people's budget. So if we can get people on the bus, we're not all going to afford EVs, guys. But there's going to be a used
way down
EV.
in price, though.
Yes,
EVs are
scales going up, prices coming down. Yeah.
25% of inflation was driven by automobiles during COVID. Tesla's dropped prices, I think, 30% in the last year. So the price of I don't want to plug Tesla, the price of that EV is lower than the average cost of the vehicle now.
There you go.
So it means that we're getting there, right? We're getting there.
Supply
but
chain.
I still think, again, for me, it's about leadership through example, and then leadership through education. I think the city could do more, the province could do more, and the feds could do more, because there is programs. That solar panel system is free if you do it right, but it's really hard to do right. Really, really hard, because there's steps you have to take, and if you don't take the right steps, they will not give you the grant, and they will not give you the zero interest loan.
I'm going to call it growing pains. I'm going to call it growing. It's a new program. They're still figuring out and straightening out the kinks. It is going to take some time, but we can't get it soon enough. And I've got engineer friends who were able to go through it only because they were experts. So now what they're saying is, hold on. There's an entrepreneurial opportunity here to help homeowners still make a reasonable return, so it's not a volunteer service, and makes it worth everybody's while. Yeah. The homeowner saves, the occupant saves, and the company that does it is making money. And it's just another transition opportunity, because we do have to transition, the just transition,
and
as
I
they're
think
calling it.
If you talk about Priuses, they've proven themselves over 15 years now? Must be close to that.
I have driven a Prius since it came into a 1999 Prius when I was Director of Transportation in UBC Vancouver. Yeah. So I've had for 24 years, I think, man, it's got to be 20, 25 years in Canada.
I sit around tables at golf courses and stuff like that with a lot of older people, and they have so much misinformation on Priuses and EVs and all that stuff. They just don't know, and that's what I'm saying. Education is the key thing.
But
right?
You got to remember trust in that information that's coming at you, and I think this comes back to an earlier comment. I mean, do you trust? And I had this very discussion with my in-laws. My 92-year-old father-in-law, he was like, yeah, let's get a hybrid Camry. My mother-in-law, she didn't necessarily trust that she knew how to operate this thing. There's a lot of, fear in not fully understanding what we're up against here. So, it's close to home for me. We have discussions in our family, and I respect everybody's opinion. We're all on a journey. I happen to be the fortunate one that got this information sooner, and I'm just trying to not judge and respect and be fair that people have their own ways of learning and being and doing. And First Nations, we haven't even touched on First Nation knowledge. We're learning so much about, for example, wetlands is a huge tool in our toolkit to fight climate change. We need those wetlands. We're going to have a lot more water here, a lot less snow. And that's going to be a problem when we have these long, dry summers, because we get it in the fall, the winter, but then we have nothing in the summer. We need that water storage, and that's Indigenous knowledge.
You had an encounter last weekend with a 96-year-old gentleman?
Yeah, I interviewed on behalf of one of our clients, actually, a 96-year-old gentleman who invested in solar when he was 84. out in Lake Country.
12 years ago.
Yep.
Nice.
So it's paid off. It paid off way earlier. In fact, I think he was promised 12. It paid off in 7 because the cost of electricity went up. And his neighbors all watched him install this in about 18 months of, seeing it go up, and then curiosity, they finally came over and said, so how's your bill look these days? And so they took a look at it, and the next neighbor installed solar, and then the next neighbor installed solar, and then the next neighbor installed.
How's your neighborhood, Jim? Is it happening? Are people looking at yours?
Around our house, there's 4 people that have put solar in since we put it in. But that's what I'm saying, education, because if you sit down and have a conversation with somebody and you show them, I think you and I have had that conversation, right? Like you're considering it. If you show them that it's actually going to save you money, it's going to be good for the world, and it's going to it's going to save you money. It's basically free if you do the steps right. But that's the key thing. You got to do the steps right, and that's where I think it gets confusing for people.
And it has to be an authentic, trusted voice. I mean, your sphere of influence,
Yeah.
your friends, your family. And it's interesting you mentioned, others getting EVs and others getting heat pumps. My neighbor across the lane got a heat pump.
I just got rid of my heat pump.
Oh, that's
You know
hilarious
why?
to hear.
Because my guy said that heat pumps don't work here.
No. Heat pumps do to a certain extent, and then you need to augment it with a solar panel. You just get your fireplace that's not gas anymore, I presume, to
I
give
don't have
augment
took
heat.
out the natural gas fireplace.
I never had any in my carriage
them
house,
out.
so there you go. So we just augment. There's maybe a couple of weeks coldest in the winter. We have to worry about it, and that we're fine. Put on an extra sweater if that's what it comes down to. But just the fact of roasting a turkey, and I have to put the heat pump on to cool our carriage house. There's so much heat, but it is really trust. Is the central issue. Why were the people up like this? You said it. They didn't know what was coming next. Who can they trust? But I think you can trust your friends, your neighbors, when you see that critical mass and the social marketing or the social sciences. Once about 25% of a community is to a point, and in BC, I'm talking about EVs, we're at over 20% already, it becomes a norm. And then you've probably, because we got 7 degrees of separation, well, with 25% of the community, chances are somebody you know.
There's a doubling.
Exactly.
What the law is. Not Murphy's Law, but
Moore's Law.
Moore's Law. There
Exactly. Thank you. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. We don't have to go too much further in BC with EVs. There are supply chain questions. That was something I was going to insert before. But Canada and UBC is one of the leaders looking for local supplies respectfully in partnership with our First Nations communities in which a lot of these minerals reside right now, or composites, or other ways of producing batteries or fuel cell technology that doesn't require those precious metals. And we don't have a lot of them, so what other composites, what other surrogates can we use for precious metals to produce this stuff? So it's coming. I think it's a combination of policies, research, community engagement. I'm loving the education comment. That's my bread and butter right now, I'll tell you that. Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more, guys.
Great. Well, did you have any further questions?
No, it was really good you spent this time with us.
I think it's great too.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for letting me be here.
And however we can help educate, maybe we can have you more on to talk about the education of this stuff.
Happy to. Anytime.
Because again, the overreach is what I think a lot of people are scared of, because whenever government gets involved, it's usually laws, mandates, bylaws, and that kind of stuff, and that's what gets people gets their back up, right? Because what do I have to do now? Especially in the past 10 years, we've seen that it definitely is increasing.
The authoritarianism approach to governance is
so much of it.
It's on the rise, and that give back from the community is real, and it needs to be probably to some degree considered. But
it is. It does absolutely need to be considered. I mean, I've run public processes way back when I was in Vancouver, and controversy. I mean, the Israeli Knesset deliberately has someone designated the devil's advocate to avoid groupthink, to be there on behalf of folks, or at committees I've had where I get everybody in a room and I actually have folks on both sides of that same issue, and I'm there to provide information when needed. But otherwise, they talk to each other and sort it out amongst themselves because they're neighbors. They're neighbors. In that way, I'm like, okay, yes, I am government, but I'm just here with what I can give you in terms of data. You can interpret it, but it really does come down to local communities, local neighborhoods, neighbors, spheres of influence. Because if you don't have an authentic voice who you can trust, it's not going to happen.
yeah.
How does government get back more trust? I guess that's a big question for a lot of people. How do they get back more trust? Because I don't think it's by enforcing more bylaws and rules. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that's going to get back more trust. I think there's trust lost in media, trust lost in government.
I'm going to let the mayor answer that one. Now that's way above my pay grade. But I tell you,
maybe another time.
As researchers, we're looking at exactly that question. As a former, and remember, guys, I mean, I was a former deputy departmental science advisor to our federal transport ministers and infrastructure ministers, and helped input on climate action and readiness reports for the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. That is a central issue, and that's why I say First Nations, they've been here first, hence the first, and they've got a lot of traditional knowledge and ways of knowing and being. We have to respect them enough to invite them into the discussion. David Suzuki, up until recently, until he retired, now I think it's his daughter, has been authentic or a trusted voice. Our physicians, who, by the way, 80 of them signed a petition yesterday in support of my motion, they really, those are the voices we need to go to. And I point to climate scientists all the time, but they're not necessarily so trusted. So actually, best way for government, in my opinion, personally, is to actually get experts in the room that's not a elected politician like me. I happen to maybe wear two hats, but honestly, no, it's just we need to invite and engage.
I agree with
but I
you
think
on that
having
point.
the debates too, right? But having the other side.
But that also requires, like, for doctors and for others to be able to have that freedom of expression, which also seems to be under threat right now with consolidation of power at the college physicians and ministry levels. And
now we're into a whole different.
I know it's another. We don't need to
next
go.
week's guest.
So with that, we do thank you for coming in, though, and really appreciate it. The story of the 96-year-old man who put solar on his roof 12 years ago will be published this week on KelownaNow, by the way. Just some final pieces coming together, some photos and things like that. It'd be an interesting story, the story of going solar and how it's paid for him. Tomorrow morning, Marcy and I will have your weather and the day's headlines as well. And
Are we
until
going to
then,
kick off Energize this week?
we may. We'll keep threatening to kick off Energize. Maybe we'll have more details on that and what that means.
Is there a bunny in there?
There is. You just, yeah.
Until then, have a great night from Kelowna Now. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
End with a laugh.